Sooner or later, everyone in Paris comes to the Bastille. It's a great place for walking and chatting. It's a mecca for rollerbladers. And demonstrating, that's what it's famous for after all. And the Tour de France on their last day of pushing their pedals around France. On the other side of the Place de la Bastille, or where the genie has just run from, lies the 11th Arrondissement. The Faubourg St. Antoine has for centuries been the center of the furniture business. As I walked down the Faubourg, I found the one remaining workshop in the main street. Monsieur Maurice, whose family have had this shop for centuries, told me that all the workshops were tucked away in the quiet courtyards behind the main road. He gave me some good addresses. The shops in the Faubourg St. Antoine cater for just about every taste, from the very conservative to the frankly outlandish. I called on Patrick Georges, whose family probably owns the most extensive collection of rare hardwoods in France.
Pieces of Cuban mahogany, squared by axes and adze at the end of 18th century. And it's the only way to get some good color in mahogany, because the mahogany take a better color when it take age.
So that's 200 years old?
More or less, yes. More or less, yes.
Is it a good color?
It's a good color, yes. And pieces of Jamaica cedar, called also Spanish cedar, with a very good, jolly good smell. And we use that mainly to make the cigar cellars. Because this wood give a good smell to the tobacco, and it's a good things to protect the wetness of the cigars. Yes, and that one, it's a basis of palm tree.
Palm tree?
Palm tree, yes. We bought that in South America, in Colombia or in Guyana, and we cut that in veneers, in so-cut veneers mainly, because it's impossible to slice that. And we obtain veneers very used actually, because the mode, the fashion are in the Art Deco period, and it was the main period using this type of veneers.
Is it very hard?
It's very, very hard wood, very hard around and very soft in the heart. Is the problem.
Yes.
Exactly. And also it's wood very hard to sew, because it's like sand.
Yes.
And you used very quick the blades of the saw. Absolutely. It's a very old so-cut veneers.
Chaque fois que vous avez une fleur, vous avez un petit filet autour, vous avez ensuite une pièce en
Monsieur Moussi
sycomore
explained to me that
bleu,
each
ensuite
flower
une
was
pièce
made up of 8
ici
separate
apparemment
pieces of
gris,
wood.
Vous avez encore à l'intérieur deux pièces, donc le centre et la périphérie de la fleur. Une fleur, vous avez un, deux,
Each time
trois,
there is a
quatre,
flower,
cinq,
it means
six,
8 more
huit pièces de
pieces.
nouveau.
So
Donc,
there are
chaque fois, vous avez
hundreds
des
of
pièces.
different
Enfin,
bits in this type of
il y a
marquetry.
des centaines de pièces sur ce genre de marqueterie.
I watched fascinated as some marquetry experts made up some panels. They cut 12 pieces of veneer at a time. The wood gives the color to the leaves, but they burn the bottoms of the leaves in hot sand to give a black edge. Just imagine the work that goes into a panel like this. In a workshop nearby, I found some serious repairs taking place. I was told that over the centuries the worms had done all this. There's clearly a lot of stress hereabouts.
Bonjour, monsieur.
These people make all those brass decorations for which French furniture is so famous. There are literally thousands and thousands of different brass fittings and decorations here. This chap is remaking a brass decoration to replace one that is missing on a piece of furniture. This gentleman is actually French polishing. Here are some finished pieces waiting to be packed and shipped to America, which is probably the last place that can afford the luxury of such work. My very pretty niece Elizabeth took me to a shop in amongst all the furniture makers run by a group of girls called the Parisians. They specialize in feathers amongst the many other fashion items they make and sell. Feathers, I'm told, are the look nowadays. Fido seems to agree. Eric Pannell cuts hard stones and repairs all kinds of statues, a real artist. He told me that in his métier he had to be interested in many other artistic skills, and that what he did was not merely manual work, but also intellectual.
Une autre façon de voir les choses, c'est-à-dire il n'y a pas que le travail de l'ouvrier, il y a aussi le travail intellectuel aussi.
Oui.
Parce que il faut
It's important to know the history and provenance of a piece of statuary before you start restoring it, he told me.
Sans savoir d'où ça vient, c'est dommage, quoi. Donc, des fois, on se pose des questions.
Et il y a beaucoup de gens qui veulent nettoyer son sculpture maintenant.
I asked him if there were many people these days who wanted their sculptures cleaned and restored. He told me the problem was the sculptures this size weighed a ton, and often the cost of moving them to his workshop cost as much as his work, and often people preferred to leave them where they were.
Préfère les laisser en l'état, quoi.
This table is made from hard stones. The stones are cut from the center of a huge geode to get the geometric pattern. This agate comes from Minas Gerais in Brazil, the biggest layer of agate in the world.
Brésil, les plus grands gîtes d'agate existants sur le monde. Ça, ce sont des jaspes d'Afrique du Sud.
This red jasper is from South Africa, which has been oxidized by iron in the earth to give it its color.
Un peu orangé, très soutenu.
This is Mexican jasper.
Mexicain, jaspe panthère.
And this is French agate that comes from the Tarn district.
Département du Tarn.
The round one is jasper from the state of Oregon. He told me he had made this table entirely from pavé from the streets of Paris. The stones had come from all over, from Sweden, the Vosges, everywhere.
C'est vraiment les pavés parisiens qui viennent de... Il y a des granits qui viennent du fin fond des Vosges.
The remarkable Mr. Pennell, like most Frenchmen, is passionate about fishing. So keen on fishing are the French that, according to Gilding, more than 50% are engaged in the sport at any one time in the summer. Mr. P has a fishing museum in his cellar. This fish trap is made from very thin glass. It is for very small fish. It has a cork in the end and is laid horizontally on the bottom of the river.
C'est un piège à poissons. Il y avait un bouchon en liège. Et les soufflages des verres sont très très fins parce que justement pour le poids, quoi, pour que l'eau rentre bien dedans. Puis ils mettaient ça entre les herbiers puis les poissons donc se prenaient.
This one is an extremely rare double-ended version.
Ça c'est déjà beaucoup plus rare.
Hearing some familiar music wafting from a courtyard, I followed the sound and discovered the last noteur in Paris. A noteur, by the way, is a man who punches holes in cardboard rolls for mechanical organs. The frou-frou is the lace petticoats under the dress of a pretty woman. The frou-frou is the charming sound that comes from this lace. On my way around the quartier, I walked through the market and dropped into the grain shop, which not only sells every known grain and bean to the people of Paris, but it also sells its surplus as bird food. The salesgirl said sensibly she preferred Italian pasta. I bought some small pink fishes called rouget and some small mackerel and grilled them on my boat with a pepper. My ideal lunch, fresh and delicious. At the sign of the brush rampant, I found the gilder's workshop. Paris is going through a period of gilding everything that's stationary. These young men more carefully place gold leaf on anything, even the genie on the top of the column in the Place de la Bastille. At the Billiards Academy, a charming name for a pool hall, they have a magnificent zinc, a bar made from one piece of zinc, much loved by the old-time Parisians. I suppose it's a sign of a misspent youth that I've always had a yen for these wonderful green tables. I had to take a close look at this player's moustache to find it was painted on by the artist herself. Claude Lebel, who makes sculptures in leather, told me his model had been based on Carpeau's statue of a fun-loving follower of Bacchus. It's made from 3 different kinds of natural leather, which I dye afterwards.
Le cuir, c'est un cuir naturel qui a été teint après.
She brings me luck because I won the Nile Prize after I finished.
Pourquoi? Parce que j'ai eu le prix de Nil après.
I found myself agreeing with the German tourist who said that Paris was wonderfully beautiful. One autumn day, I had a surprise visit from the local school. The children had made special French sailor hats for their expedition to the port of the Arsenal, where I was moored.
C'est bien de tourner là. Il est magnifique.
Et Léa.
Voilà. On va dans un autre bateau.
The further I wandered into the quartier, the more amazing the people seemed to become. This doll doctor earned his living quite happily, doing what he really liked. I repaired dolls, baby dolls and teddy bears. Nowadays, no one is allowed to make this celluloid. I have a large stock of bits that I do my repairs with. In the olden days, the people who repaired umbrellas repaired dolls. I didn't want to mend umbrellas. I learned how to mend dolls myself. There was no school. I had an electrician certificate. I asked him if he mended broken hearts. Oh yes, children bring me their dolls as though I am their savior. The children think it's their child that I'm going to repair. A woman came with a broken doll. Her little girl had been in hospital for 3 days because she was so upset she became ill. I repaired the doll very quickly. When the child came to collect it, she was delighted and gave me a big hug. Here are the eyes.
Ce que ça fait les yeux, c'est joli. Et puis alors il y a aussi, alors ici vous voyez, bon, ce sont des yeux marrons. J'ai des yeux bleus. Vous voyez ici aussi des yeux bleus. J'ai des petits. J'ai des gros. Et puis vous voyez ici, ça c'est pour les bébés de couleur. Ça date en 1930 à peu près, ça c'est très ancien.
Here's the wig made entirely from natural hair.
C'est exclusivement du cheveu naturel.
What an extraordinary thing it is to spend one's life doing this. But I suppose it gives enormous pleasure to some children and is therefore worth it. The doll doctor had told me to go and see his neighbours, 2 brothers who turned pewter pots. The elder brother showed me how he did it. The brothers told me that their trade was increasing now they were on the internet. There can't be too many people who need turned pewter pots, but if they do, this is where they come. To do this kind of turning, you need to have a strap around your hips and push against the strap and the very long turning tool to shape the metal. Some Parisian restaurants even look good enough to eat from the outside. At the end of the Cour de l'Homme stands the old sawmill that used to cut the timber for the woodworkers that worked and lived in the courtyard. This French polisher explained to me the varnish he used in his craft. Gumlax, he said, was the sap of the jujubier tree, which grew in India. It came in various qualities and colors.
Il y a différentes qualités, hein. Il y en a de la orange, de la rouge, de la transparente. Voilà. Et maintenant je ressuie. On le fait en 2 fois toujours.
To find a pleasant concierge is like finding a pearl beyond price. Helene, who's been here in this courtyard for 27 years, told me that when she'd come, there had been 30 different trades in the court.
Mais il y avait beaucoup d'artisans. Oh, il y avait une trentaine d'artisans.
My job was to clean the stairs every day. I would sweep and wash my stairs every day. In those days, we used to brush the stairs by hand. And I would take the post up 3 times a day.
Les paliers à la broche, évidemment. Et je montais le courrier tous les jours.
What was amusing was on summer nights when the windows were open and you heard everything. Often on the following morning, I would say, last night you were quarreling, but today you are arm in arm, like 2 lovers. Yes, I used to say that. Everyone was very friendly.
Puis aujourd'hui, ils sont bras dessus, comme 2 amoureux. Ah, ben alors j'ai dit ça. Non, mais ici, il y a une très grande entente.
Okay, you do it for me.
Je te remplace, tu prends ma place.
Ouais, c'est ça, ouais.
You're very nice, I said, not like most concierges.
Ils sont pas gentils,
They're not
les
nice then,
concierges.
concierge.
Ben, vous savez, oh, il y a des fois, je vais vous dire un truc, je gueule.
I do shout sometimes. What are you doing there?
Hey, qu'est-ce que tu fais là?
You do that all the time.
Voilà ce qu'on dit.
There you are, listen to what he says.
Voilà.
On the other side of the courtyard is Madame Flay, one of the most respected leather workers in Paris, specializing in embossing leather of all sorts. Apart from teaching her the embosser's trade, her father left her the biggest collection of embossing tools in Paris.
Ça te donnera pleine force. On y va. J'ose plus appuyer. Oui, alors vos techniciens.
Oui, je vous les ai pas mis, vous avez dit pas apprécié, donc comme ça,
The king of the courtyard goes for his morning stroll.
Ça marche maintenant, il suffisait que je sois avec Madame l'évêque et puis voilà. Non, c'est vrai.
Another day in the Cour de l'Homme comes to an end. Let's hope the developers don't move in too soon and rip out the heart of Paris.